those different things that IMAGINiT brings, and it's part of that. But what we want to look at today specifically is the idea of, not that way, the Autodesk product management. And here's the thing, I liked this slide a lot. One of my colleagues came up with this because as soon as you start talking data management, it is so easy to just get caught up in all of these different things, and you'll hear all of this different stuff. Single source of truth is in there, and concurrent design, and now these are all, if I look through this list, these are all good things, but it gets complicated to take all of this in. This is a lot of information. Seems like it's all happening at once. How in the world do we access this? And what I want to do is I want to break this down to kind of a simpler version. I just want to myself, I'm a fairly simple guy, so I want to keep this about as simple as we can and what this actually does when we look at it. So a big idea with Vault is the idea of the single source of truth. We have one location that we can go to for this. Whenever data management comes up, I always say, you're already doing data management. Everybody does data management. When I had my 3.5-inch floppies and I had named them and kept them in their case, I was doing data management. All of that is data management. The idea with this is we can go to a single source for that information. And then within that single source, share it out to multiple people. So instead of having things stored on different drives, or worse yet, individuals' drives, or as I've seen in some locations, a whole series of CDs or different drives that we need to access, we have a single source that we can get to. Everyone has access to the information. The key idea with Vault is people have the right information, the right people have the right information at the right time. That's what we're trying to do, to make sure we have the correct access for the correct people. Everyone can access it. So those types of tools are what this is all about. And I'm going to talk about kind of the features, talk a little bit about how we need, what it takes to set that up and where that exists and how that goes. But let's take a look at some of the features of this and what this can bring. And anytime we start to implement something like this, there is the simple idea of it's a single location. But if that's all there is, there's other ways to do it. So Vault actually brings in some very specific tools that help us out with that. And a big one is this idea of, we talk about increased productivity. It's like, well, how does that work? What does that mean? Well, one of the first ones is this idea of fast data searching, being able to locate the data very quickly. So what Vault is, at its core, it's a file store. It's all the files we would have. And then it's a database that contains the information about those files. And I'll point this out in a minute. I'll run some searches and take a look at some things. So instead of looking in a folder, and I feel like that's how, that's basically what I was doing when I'm saving it on my 3.5-inch floppies and putting it in a case. I go to the case, I get the floppy, take the correct floppy out, put it in and get the right file. We do that today, except that you go to the X drive, you go to the projects, you go to this, you go to that. It's that same idea. With Vault, we still have folders, but we can now search for file information. I want the file that was created 2 weeks ago. I want the file that was created 2 weeks ago that Caleb worked on that had a J in the title. All of those types of things we can do a whole lot better than we could before. We also have this idea of check in and check out of files. Now, I'll talk about that in a moment, but with a Windows file structure, which is the most common data management tool, you don't have that. If you access a file, you access a file. You can copy it to other locations. It's easy to step outside of the correct workflow. Well, with this, we have a way that we check in and check it out. Only one person can have control of a file at a time. Only one person can edit a file at a time. Nothing's going to be edited out of turn. And part of that is when we check those in, we do have a tracking of that. We will know, yep, on Tuesday, this is what it looked like, and then Caleb checked it out and checked it back in, and now this is what it looks like here on Thursday. So there is that history there that's part of that. I already mentioned the idea of that central location for having the data. We can, so it's all of our CAD files can be in there. We can put in, maybe some Word docs, whatever it would be as part of that, but the idea of project data. Then there's other tools that speed your life up. If I have an XREF, for example, or if I'm dealing with a 3D tool like Inventor, where there's links between files, and I do a rename, I can break those links. Well, now there's tools to rename files, replace files, copy an entire design as part of that in there, where I take all of the files that I have and I can use them, copy them within the tool. So all of this is kind of entry level, base level Vault. And there's a tool called Vault Basic that's out there. And that's a big part of all of the things that it has as part of this. So I'm just going to show off just a few of these here real quick. I'm going to jump into my Vault that I have right here. And what you'll see, and I apologize, Gladys, is it coming through that you can see my Vault that I have there?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Okay, just want to make sure. So when I take a look in here, I do have a folder structure. I don't know why that humans are just geared that way, that we like to put things in categories and subcategories and right on down the line. So I do have my folder structure. I have this idea of the different files that I have in here. And so this is, kind of what we'd expect if we're even looking at Windows. This is just kind of what it looks like. But there's a lot more going on, and I'll point some of this out. For example, if I take a look, and I'll look over here to another file. If I take a look at this file, I've got all of this information about it. I've got a description, a designer, a material, a part number, a stock number. If I take a look back here at these AutoCAD files, I've got things such as what is the main spec for this file, spec 1, spec 2. I've got information that's filled out on these. And that information can come from the file directly. There's some information that just comes off the files, such as what date it was created, who created it, when did they work with it last, standard, what we think of as file properties. And then I also have these user properties that I can have as part of that. And those user properties can be pulled off of the file if they're part of the file properties, such as author, comments, things like that. Or I can pull them directly off of the title block. So if you have a title block in AutoCAD that has attributes, we can go access those attributes and pull them into Vault to use within here. Let me tell you what we use them for. It's all about searching. I'm going to go here and I'm going to type the word blower. And it searches through all of my Vault and it finds all of these different files. And we'll talk about why they're what's coming up here. So it searched through and it found all these different files. I'm going to do cover plate. I know there's only one of those. So I go, there's a few. So it goes and it finds cover plate. And you'll notice how quick that return is. It's very different than a Windows search. It's going through and it's finding that information very quickly, locating it, and going through. Now this looked through the file names and it found it in each location. It found cover plate in each location. But if I search for the word steel, notice that this band, it's 130-247-band, doesn't say steel anywhere in there. So this search that I'm doing isn't just looking at file names. It's looking at that and any of the properties that I have over here. So it found steel in one of those properties. So this is a fast search. And I'll hear that a lot. Oh, Vault's got this really fast search, and it does. But it also has a really complex search. I can search across multiple properties, or I can search across any property that's available in Vault. And I can combine them up. So I could find something that was created on a specific date where the comment was this and the material was that. And I can switch these out. I can add in new ones. I can have as many of those queries that I would like to have in there as part of that. So being able to search for files is a huge part of Vault. Because we can include information that comes in off the title block, I theoretically could search for, if I'm dealing with, let's say, a facility layout, I could search for campus, building, department, and filter it by all of those. I'm looking at a particular campus, looking at a particular building, and I want to find things that are only related to this department. As long as that information we've extracted that into Vault from the file, again, from file properties or from attributes, either one, we can run those types of searches. Okay, so I mentioned the idea of being able to search, love it. I can go find files. One thing I do a lot of times is once I find a file, I'm going to go ahead and say, this is the one I'm working with. It feels like I'm doing this all the time. I'm going to create a shortcut for that. So now I have just a shortcut to that file. It'll take me right to it every time. Then I'm going to jump over and take a look at this in AutoCAD. So Vault is housing our files. That's where they live. That's where they go. If I need to go find a file and look for some information, that's where it's going to be. What I can do though is from my CAD tool, I'm going to go ahead and open up a file. And the first thing you're going to see is it's going to ask me to log in. I didn't log into my other one. I was already logged in, but I have a specific username and a specific password. That's how they know who's accessing the files. That's how we control who has access to the files. Remember, it's the right file to the right person at the right time. We want to control how this is going to work and who can have access to them. But I'm going to go ahead and log into my Vault. And I told it to open, so it's going to go here and we're going to jump right into open a file. And I'm looking at that same folder set that I had just a moment ago. So I can come in here and look at designs and see all of my designs. I've got all of that information here. I also have a search tool that I can look for. What I'm going to do is say, hey, take a look at any shortcuts I might have. So the shortcut I created in Vault is also over here. It all has to do with the login and those different things. But I'm going to go ahead and grab this floor plan sample and I'm going to go ahead and open it up. What happens? It says, hey, this file is not checked out. Do you want to check it out? And this is a core piece of functionality with Vault. I'm going to check the file out and it does two things. One, it copies it to my local drive. So this is sitting out on the server. I've got all these files out on the server, but when I go to work on it, it copies it to my local drive. Matter of fact, it didn't just copy it. If this had any XREFs attached to it, it's going to bring those along for the ride too. So it's going to get whatever files I need to view this and bring it up. It also put a check mark on it in Vault that says Caleb has it, nobody else can touch it. We can't go in and edit it right now. Only I have editing rights. I'm just going to clean up some of these columns that I don't need. And say, okay, that sounds great. And then I'm going to take that file and I'm going to check it back into Vault. When I check it back into Vault, I'm going to say, go ahead and close the file, delete the one that's in my hard drive, and push that back over to Vault. So on a day-to-day basis of just working with Vault, it's really just like working with AutoCAD or working with Inventor or Civil 3D or whatever tool you're using to interface with Vault. I just go, I open up my CAD product, I can get my files from Vault. The only additional thing it's going to ask me is about checking the file out and checking the file in. And that file, now that I've checked it in, I have a history on it. And I can see, I'm just going to move this up so I can see a little bit. I can see, sure enough, on 6/30/2022 at 1:16, that file was checked back in by administrator. My history is there. We have an audit trail that's part of that. We can see where that was. We can view where that, where it's been as part of that. I'll point out too, I do have a viewer built into here for this file, and I can come in and view it right within Vault as part of, and that's just part of the sets that I have with that. I can even see all the, if I have multiple sheets on it, I can view those and can view the file as part of it. So I just want to point that out. So the big idea here is I've got a single source of truth. I've got one location where I can go. I've got a file that I can review, have all these different things both linked to, and it'll check out all of them, and the check-in, check-out controls how I access it. So I can go get the file, check it in, check it out, access it. This is all what we would see as Vault Basic, all of that tool set that we have right there. And there's, you may have Vault Basic today. It might not just be installed. There's certain tool sets that Vault Basic is just built into and part of. We can extend to that though, beyond the idea of just simple logins, searching for files, searching for folders. We can go further and have things, what we call life cycles. And life cycles define whether a file is released, work in progress, could be obsoleted, whatever it might be. We also can have enhanced data security for this. So we can control a particular file and say, well, if it's in a review state, only project managers can see it. If it's released, then manufacturing can see it, but manufacturing can't see it if it's in work in progress. And we have a lot of control over that. We also have levels of control where we can go down to an individual folder or file and assign permissions to that. So a lot of times, particularly if we're looking at any type of government agency, the idea of security and the idea of audits, having an audit trail, and the idea of granting permissions to specific levels at specific times, all of these become really important. And with Vault Basic, if you're in, you're in. You can get in and you can view things. We can limit whether you can edit or not. But with Vault Professional, we can limit which folders you're in. We can limit at which stage you're allowed to edit files in those folders. There's a lot of level of control that we have as part of that. So the idea of the data security, revision control, and then the life cycles are a key part of this. Another key part of Professional is the idea of engineering change orders, where I can take components, put them under engineering change orders, have it go through a workflow, have people be notified at different points in that workflow. They're, for example, under the review state, they can approve or reject, so it goes back into a loop there. During the check state, notice it can be reviewed and rejected. So this is this could be an iterative workflow until we get through finally to the end as part of that. So this again builds on top of what I was just talking about. There's the idea of Vault as a check-in, check-out tool, a single source of truth, and then all of this that we can enhance and build on and move out from. There's also the idea of other tools that are available within Vault Pro, automatic translations, automatic file naming, batch plotting, project reporting. To me, these are all, they're extra. These are beneficial, absolutely. But the core is that idea of looking at some of those, being able to have the life cycle states and then have the, taking a look at the revision control life cycle states and then the engineering change orders that are part of that. So again, I'm just going to jump back here into Vault. We'll just take a look at that file I had a moment ago. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add it to a change order. So I'm going to add it to a new change order. And I'll just give it a simple title here. I'll say review, updates, and approve. So that file is going along for the ride, and I can view the, there's that viewable that's part of it. So anyone who has this change order can come in here and view my information that I have. I can even go so far as to point it out to them if I wanted to. I'll just create that changes. I'll just say I'll save that as part of this overall, so that when they come in, they can view the markups and see my changes that are part of that. So I'm sending that along for the ride, and what I'm going to do is I'll save this one. I've got it all saved. I've got it created. And then I've got this status that I'm in and where I'm at. And I'm going to just push on down the line. I'm going to say, yep, that sounds good. We're going to submit this. And it's now a change order that's going out. This comment that comes up, I can fill out. Notice I can add this to the email. This is all happening on my system, so I haven't set up my email right now. But basically, whoever I have in the list that needs to be in each one of these boxes gets an email, and they get informed that, hey, there's something happening here. Let's review this. That change order is permanently with this file. So if I go take a look, I've got that change order as part of that file, and I can start moving along to the next phase that I have here. So right now, it's a new change order. So the change administrator can say, you know what? Yeah, let's send that on to be worked on if necessary. And I've got things I could do. It could just be I could submit, I could force the approval, but I'm going to send it on to some engineers that need to take a look at this. They could do any work that they need to do as part of that. Once that's complete, I'm going to push it on to a review state. And review is kind of unusual. I could have, if I have 5 people in review, I could say any one of the 5 can approve or all 5 have to approve. So with all of the others, it's any one person can push it on. Review has a different idea with that. And the other thing is I'm doing all of this as we go, right? I'm just kind of going through, stepping in. This has taken me minutes. Typically, this would occur over a day or series of days. It could be weeks that a change order's out there as we're changing a lot of different things, but I'm going to approve my changes and finally close out the change order that's on that. That change order, always, if I take a look at my list of change orders, I can see all of my change orders that I have here in Vault. These are all the ones that I've created at different times and the different records that I have in as part of that. And then I can go the other way and I can see all of the files. So here's my change order and update per red lines, please update, all these different information that I have as part of that. This is the one I just did. It's my latest one here. I can see what records were against that. And if I go to that folder and look at that record, I can see what change orders have been put against it. So again, I have that audit trail, I have that history, all of my information is laid out there and I can go and review that a little bit. I'm going to do one last thing here. Now that this has been approved, everybody signed off on it, I'm going to change its state to released. So changing a state actually affects a few different things in here. It's going to change the state for sure. It's going to change what the state is called from work in progress to released. It's also going to put a padlock on it for me. This file is now released and locked down. It cannot be edited. If I want to edit that file, I have to move it from released back to work in progress, and that is automatically going to bump the revision for me. So Vault Basic gives us data management control, a single place for the files, check in and check out. And Vault Professional enhances that with all of those tools, plus the idea of having the states, having whether it's released, work in progress, obsolete, having that control over it, and then the idea of ensuring change orders as part of that as well. Security levels also enhanced. There's a lot of things, but those are always the ones that stand out to me as the bigger tools that we can begin working with and accessing as we're going through this. Okay, so jump back here. I do want to talk a little bit about how Vault is set up and some of the things that go into that. So Vault is hosted on a server. We typically would have a server that would have SQL on it, and it has the Vault server we call on it. What's the Autodesk Data Management Console, and then SQL goes on there. It uses IIS as well. The database is encrypted, the file store and the database are encrypted, and it typically, all this requires its own backup. So the nice thing about this is, looking at, if we're looking at a government agency, there's this, this can be locally hosted on servers with your level of security that you want to set up. Right now, 2016 and 2019 are the operating systems for that. So a Vault server is just a server in your server farm with server 2016 or 2019 on it. That's really all we need to set this up. This is not a cloud-based tool. This is very much a localized tool that you can access. Now, we do have things where we can turn on sharing between sites and lots of that, but at a core level, it's a server-based tool. We don't need access to internet. We don't need all of that. The web server portion is just handled internally. I've got one client I work with. It's on an Air Force base, and the server. So many things are on the internet now. It took a little bit to figure out how to get what we needed on that server, but we had a good path for that because that server it literally only touched the clients. Like, it was connected to nothing else. So we had to get creative a few times. But in that type of environment where it's very maintained and very locked down, this will work really well with that. And what does it work with? It's a whole bunch of different things. All of the Autodesk tools that we would typically think of. So all of the AutoCADs, right? There's all those flavors of AutoCAD that we have. Definitely works with those. And the simulation tools, Navisworks, so many of the standard Autodesk tools. Office as well, PowerPoint, Word, Excel, and Outlook all have a add-in for that, just like the one where I logged in through AutoCAD and logged into my Vault, went and found the files. It's exactly the same way over there. And if with Vault Professional does work with MicroStation, SolidWorks, and Creo. So it's a wide range of tools that we can have that where we're going to be accessing Vault and bringing that in. So I've talked for about a half an hour now. That was a lot of me explaining a lot of things. And I did go through it fairly quickly, right? There's each of these topics can be much deeper. And it's easy to say, yep, we can do change orders, but what do change orders look like at your location? What do we need to, how do we need to adapt those? Or, you know, what's your security level? All of these different types of things. This is all information that we can really dig into and begin to understand a lot at a much deeper level. But I want to, but looking at that, so if you have those types of questions, you know, obviously put them into the Q&A. We'd be glad to answer those if we can there. Go have an extended conversation after this as well. But I do want to take some time, gosh, was it last week, I guess? I met Brian and he was gracious enough to go through and we talked a little bit about how Vault looks at their location at Brookhaven National Laboratory. And we just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about a real world experience that someone's had with Vault and what it's doing for them. So I am going to put on my interviewer hat. I'm going to turn on my camera here and go through just a few questions with Brian. Brian, thanks for jumping on here. I'm gonna, I guess my first thing as we take a look at this, there we go, make sure my cameras are up there, is tell me a little bit just about yourself, you know, what you do at Brookhaven, and then what Brookhaven does.
Well, BNL Brookhaven Lab is a research and development lab. I've been there for many years. It's going to be 30 years in September. And I'm a design engineer. We've been using Vault for about 16 years. And pretty much all the features that you just mentioned, you know, we do use, including the electronic, you know, release process. And it's been a great benefit to us, you know, for data management, for all the reasons that you mentioned, searching and checking in, checking out.
So I guess tell me a little bit about Brookhaven. Like, what does Brookhaven do?
It's a research and development lab, like I mentioned. They do, it's one of 10 national laboratories that are funded by Department of Energy Science. And the research includes high energy physics, energy science and technology, environmental bioscience, nanoscience, national security. And, you know, we did work on, awarded 7 Nobel Prizes on the work we've done here. And I currently work for National Light Source 2. Light Source 1 started in like 1982, and Light Source 2 took over roughly 16 years ago, and then decommissioned Light Source 1. But we do, you know, a lot of different research and development.
Okay. And then, so you mentioned you started using Vault about 16 years ago. Yep. In my experience, it's no one wakes up in the morning and says, man, you know, it sounds great implementing data management, right? There's something leading you up to it where you go, doggone it, we got to figure out how to corral this. So what were you guys running into that made you go, maybe we need to look at Vault?
Well, it's funny because a different department in the lab just contacted me today.
Oh, okay.
It's a new project, and right now they're working on a shared directory.
Right.
So people are, you know, working on files. I thought I was working on that file, and you know, all that kind of stuff. And you know, like you mentioned before, on the floppy drives, or you know, people used to work in their own little worlds.
Yep.
On thumb drives or whatever, and you know, you pass information, and sometimes you know, you end up having multiple people working on the same file and losing information. Yep. And, you know, all of that stuff. So, you know, we needed a better, you know, there's like 3,000 people that work at the lab, and Light Source 2 has about 220 people.
Okay.
And we have 200 users of Vault. And, you know, we needed some structure, some, general place to keep our files and share our files. And a lot of people from other departments, came over and they said, oh, I work my own, and, I'll give you the files when I'm done. And it was a little hard to get some of the people up,
Sure.
on board, if you will, including, QA and safety. But, once we were using it a few months and they saw how it worked, everybody, was happy that we use it.
Yeah, and it's so you said you've been using it for 16 years. It's and it's interesting to me. So I always say, IMAGINiT does 50 to 75 Vault implementations or updates in a year, and those range from. I was just talking to a company; they had 4 people in Vault, and so it's always neat to me to hear, we've got up to 200 people in Vault. Now, are all of those contributors, or some of those just viewers? I guess, how is that split up?
A lot of them are, some of them scientific staff where they just approve ECOs.
Okay.
And, QA also, they don't, work on files, but they also approve the ECOs. So we do the electronic, every file that we release or revise gets the electronic, release process through Vault. And we set up different routings for each project, if you will, depending on, so it has different scientific staff, different engineers, different designers, and QA and safety people. And, I think we have roughly 70 something designers and engineers.
Okay, that's a good size, yeah.
Putting files in and out, but most of the other ones are just there to either view files or approve ECOs.
Okay, and that's really common, right? That it's a mix. It's not just people that are actively editing files, but it's a mix of those. So that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious, do you have a sense of how much data you have in Vault overall? Is it 100,000 files or a lot?
I would say too many because, and I've been trying to get our users to everybody thinks it's just a place you just dump files and, layout 1, layout 2, layout 3. And so, but we have over about 2.2 terabytes. So
Okay.
we have a lot of information, and I must say Vault doing searches is still very fast. We have no issues as of yet, with the size of it, other than, going back in there and trying to do cleanup and stuff. But
which is, and it's difficult to get away from that, right? It's, I think I always say there's a human element in everything, we can automate so far. So I know that IMAGINiT had partnered with you to get the Vault in place and to put some of that in. What, I guess, tell me a little bit, what value how did IMAGINiT help, I guess, is my question in setting that up.
Well, with a little bit of everything, training, purchasing when I needed, I had questions about upgrades and stuff like that. Especially helped me with server upgrades because I don't do the server side. Sometimes I wish I did. Sometimes I'm glad I don't because I have enough on my plate. But they helped me a lot with that. And right now we're going to do some Revit training with them.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, and I guess that's, it's been very fun for me, having been with IMAGINiT as long as I have, to be involved with such a wide range of projects, and the fact that we can set up a Vault, we can do Revit training, we've got a lot of different things. So that's great. Yeah, that's definitely, I was talking about that depth of people and the knowledge there. So yeah, it goes back a ways. And I guess, what's next? Do you have any different things on the horizon that you're hoping to implement? Any new features or any different things that you hope to put in place with Vault or with Autodesk?
Not really, other than getting this other department up and running with
Yeah.
Vault. We have a couple other departments already using Vault too. A lot of them don't use or a couple of them don't use the electronic release process. And since I rolled that out about 10 years ago, people want to, get involved with that because, you're running around papers and sheets that people sign off on, and, all the things with the, locking down the file, the watermarks. We had people bring drawings to machine shops and the guy's making the part to an old Rev and things like that. So we have kind of forced the issue that most of the shops, depending on the project, but I'd say 80% of them, they're not allowed to make any parts instead unless it has the released effective stamp on it.
I gotcha. Okay, so you're using the watermarks to make sure that happens. Yeah.
And you can modify those watermarks to your needs and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
And
that's
right now, I could never go back and not use, a data
well,
manager. The
yeah,
searches,
it is
the word
difficult to.
used, and if you have a part and you want to modify it, you can see where it's used, so you can
Right.
see what other assemblies it's going to affect, and so there's a lot of benefits all around.
Yep, I'd agree. Yeah, you're talking about the revisions. I always say it's bad enough when there's both an A and a B revision floating out there. I said it's worse when there's two versions of B floating out there, right? Yeah, because then it's like, oh, there's a new one. But yeah, when it's suddenly like, which one of these is right? So I think that's where that does come in. And you mentioned the different departments. And I think it's really common where a lot of times we'll see it start within one particular department or one group, and then it expands out from there. And the other thing you pointed out that I thought was interesting is, they originally didn't use the change process, and now they're starting to, whatever department that was. And that's common too, where you don't have to, you eat the elephant one bite at a time, right? You can say, okay, we're going to start with setting up our folders. We're going to start with this. We're going to start with that. And we don't have to turn everything on tomorrow. We can do a gradual process. So.
Yeah, they're starting with the check-in, check-out process. So you only have one person working on the file, and you can go on Vault and see who's working on it and all of that. But now they want to, like you said, get into the electronic release process.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's nice that we can build up to that. Well, Brian, this has been fun. I will say this: you were my first interview in one of my webcasts I've done. So you were an excellent interview. I appreciate it so much.
This is my first webcast, so I thank you, and I hope I didn't mess it up too much.
Hey, we both did great, so we're awesome. All right, well, thanks so much. I'm gonna just do a few things to wrap up. And Brian, again, thanks so much for that. I'm gonna kill my
Thank you. Nice seeing you.
All right, so again, thanks so much. It's just so interesting for me to hear what works with other clients, what's in place and how this is really being adopted. It's easy. I feel like I work in this, I hear so much of this software and I live in the software world, but how is it actually applied always fascinates me. So